Hey guys, before the video starts, I want to say that I added a join button where you can become member of Mr. Prodanov's family. And also, to all those who are new, feel free to subscribe. It can help a lot. I found a dark web society that hunts paranormal creatures. Alright, this is going to sound insane, but I need to get it off my chest. It started about 6 months ago when I was digging around the dark web. Yeah, I know, stupid move, but I was bored and curious. You hear stories about red rooms, human trafficking, and illegal auctions, but what I stumbled upon was something else entirely. It was a forum called the Midnight Society. At first glance, it looked like any other dark web community, filled with threads about hacking, drugs, and conspiracy theories. But one thread caught my eye: Hunters of the Unknown. The title alone was intriguing enough, so I clicked on it. The thread was filled with stories of people claiming to have encountered creatures that defy explanation, things that make Bigfoot look like a kid's bedtime story. There were detailed accounts of hunts, gruesome photos of what they called trophies, and encrypted videos of their expeditions. It felt like a twisted, paranormal version of a hunting club. I spent hours reading through the posts, my curiosity turning into a sick fascination. The stories were disturbing, but I couldn't look away. Then I saw a message from one of the moderators inviting new members to join the next hunt. All you had to do was prove your worth by finding something unnatural and posting evidence. The prize? A spot in their society and access to the truth. Now, I've seen some messed up things online, but this was different. It felt real, like these people genuinely believed in what they were doing. My rational mind was screaming at me to back off, but something else, something darker, was pulling me in. I wanted to know more. So I did the stupidest thing imaginable. I started hunting. I live in a rural area, surrounded by dense forests and abandoned buildings. Perfect hunting grounds, right? I began my search in an old, decrepit house that locals claimed was haunted. I didn't believe in ghosts, but I needed something, anything, to get me into that society. The house was a wreck. Broken windows, collapsed roof, and the stench of rot filled the air. I felt a chill run down my spine as I stepped inside, flashlight in hand. The floors creaked under my weight, and the walls were covered in mold and graffiti. It was exactly what you'd expect from a haunted house. I spent hours searching, finding nothing but dust and decay. Frustrated, I was about to give up when I heard it. A low, guttural growl coming from the basement. My heart pounded as I made my way down the creaky stairs, the growl growing louder with each step. The air was thick and musty, making it hard to breathe. At the bottom of the stairs, my flashlight beam caught something in the corner. A figure, hunched over and grotesque, with glowing red eyes. It looked like a twisted, demonic version of a human, with long, bony limbs and sharp claws. My mind raced, trying to process what I was seeing. This couldn't be real, could it? Before I could react, the creature lunged at me, its claws tearing through my jacket. I stumbled back, falling onto the stairs and dropping my flashlight. The basement plunged into darkness, the only sound the creature's growls and my own ragged breathing. I scrambled to my feet, adrenaline surging through my veins, and bolted up the stairs. I didn't stop running until I was back in my car, hands trembling as I fumbled for the keys. My mind was a whirlwind of fear and confusion. What the hell had I just seen? Was it real? or had my mind played tricks on me? Either way, I had my proof. I snapped a shaky photo of the scratch marks on my jacket and the few blurry shots of the creature. I posted the evidence on the forum, heart pounding as I hit submit. Hours felt like days as I waited for a response. When it finally came, it was a private message from the moderator. "Welcome to the Midnight Society. You've proven yourself worthy. Further instructions will follow." I should have felt relief, maybe even excitement, but all I felt was dread. What had I gotten myself into? Days passed without a word. I started to think maybe it was all a sick joke. Then one night, an unmarked envelope appeared on my doorstep. Inside was a plane ticket and a handwritten note. "Welcome to the hunt. Come prepared." I didn't tell anyone where I was going. How could I? They'd think I was crazy. I packed a bag with the essentials: clothes, a flashlight, a hunting knife, and a camera. The flight was long and uneventful, giving me too much time to second-guess my decision. But it was too late to back out now. When I landed, a black SUV was waiting for me. The driver, a burly guy with a scar across his face, didn't say a word. He just handed me a blindfold and motioned for me to get in. My heart raced as I put it on, my mind filled with images of what awaited me. After what felt like an eternity, the car stopped. The driver removed my blindfold, and I found myself in front of a large, isolated cabin surrounded by dense forest. A group of people stood outside, their faces obscured by masks. The leader, a tall figure wearing a black hood, stepped forward and handed me a mask of my own. "Welcome, Hunter," he said, his voice cold and mechanical through the mask. "Tonight, we hunt." Part of me wanted to turn and run, but the darker part, the part that had led me here, kept me rooted to the spot. I put on the mask and followed them into the cabin, my heart pounding with a mix of fear and anticipation. Inside, the cabin was dimly lit, filled with weapons and equipment. Maps of the area covered the walls, marked with symbols and notes. The leader briefed us on our target, a creature that had been terrorizing the nearby town, leaving a trail of mutilated bodies in its wake. The locals called it the Beast. As we geared up, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was in over my head. These people were serious, and this was no game. The leader handed me a rifle and nodded. "Stay close and don't hesitate," he said. "If you see it, shoot to kill." We moved out into the night, the forest a dark, oppressive presence around us. The only sounds were our footsteps and the distant cries of nocturnal animals. My senses were on high alert, every shadow and rustle sending a jolt of fear through me. Hours passed without a sign of the beast. Just as I started to think it was a wild goose chase, we heard it, a blood-curdling scream that echoed through the trees. We moved quickly, following the sound to a small clearing. What we saw there still haunts me. The beast was real, and it was unlike anything I'd ever seen. It stood over 8 feet tall, with matted fur and eyes that glowed with a malevolent intelligence. Its claws were stained with blood, and its teeth were bared in a snarl. It was feasting on something, or someone. The leader raised his rifle and fired. The shot rang out, shattering the silence. The beast roared in pain and fury, turning its gaze on us. In that moment, I knew we were outmatched. Chaos erupted as we fired at the creature, our bullets barely slowing it down. It moved with terrifying speed, tearing through our ranks like a force of nature. The air was filled with screams and the sounds of flesh being torn apart. I ran, my mind a blur of terror and adrenaline. I didn't stop until I was back at the cabin, covered in sweat and blood. The others were nowhere to be seen. I could still hear the creature's roars in the distance, a chilling reminder of what lurked in the darkness. I managed to make it back home, but I wasn't the same. Nightmares plagued me, and every shadow seemed to hide the beast. I tried to warn others, but no one believed me. They thought I was crazy, traumatized by my own delusions. But I know the truth. There are things out there, things that defy explanation, and there's a society dedicated to hunting them, hidden in the darkest corners of the web. I found them, and I barely escaped with my life. But the hunt isn't over, because now they're hunting me. I thought escaping the Midnight Society's hunt would be the end of it. I was wrong. The nightmares that followed were only the beginning. The beast's roar haunted my sleep, and I'd wake up drenched in sweat, convinced it was lurking outside my window. One night, about a month after I returned home, I noticed something strange. There were scratches on my front door, deep gouges that hadn't been there before. I tried to convince myself it was just a wild animal, but deep down, I knew better. The society had found me. The next few days were hell. I started receiving cryptic messages online, the kind that only someone familiar with the dark web would understand. We see you. The hunt never ends. My paranoia grew, and I found myself constantly looking over my shoulder, expecting to see one of those masked figures from the cabin. One evening, as I was leaving work, I noticed a black SUV parked across the street. It looked eerily similar to the one that had picked me up for the hunt. My heart raced as I quickened my pace, trying to lose it in traffic. But the SUV followed, keeping a steady distance. I took a series of random turns, desperately trying to shake it off, but it was no use. When I finally reached my apartment, I bolted inside and locked the door, my hands shaking. I pulled the curtain shut and tried to calm down, telling myself it was just my imagination. But then my phone buzzed with a new message. "We know where you live." Panic set in. I needed help. Someone who could understand what I was going through. But who? The police would never believe me. I decided to reach out to an old friend, Mark, who was a bit of a conspiracy nut. If anyone could help me make sense of this, it was him. I explained everything to Mark, from the dark web forum to the hunt and the beast. To my surprise, he believed me. "I've heard of the Midnight Society," he said, his face pale. "They're real, and they're dangerous. You need to get out of here, now." We packed my essentials and left my apartment, planning to stay at Mark's secluded cabin in the woods. It was the only place we could think of that might be safe. The drive was tense, both of us on high alert for any sign of the black SUV. We arrived at the cabin late at night, the forest around us a wall of darkness. For a while, it seemed like we were in the clear. The cabin was well stocked, and Mark had enough firepower to make us feel somewhat secure. But the feeling of safety was an illusion. It wasn't long before we realized we were being watched. It started with strange noises at night, footsteps crunching on the forest floor, low growls that seemed to echo from the trees. We set up makeshift alarms around the cabin, but nothing could prepare us for what happened next. One night, we heard it, a loud, bone-chilling howl that sent shivers down my spine. It was the beast. I knew it was. Mark grabbed his rifle, and we went outside, our flashlights cutting through the darkness. The forest was eerily silent. The only sound our ragged breathing. We found the source of the howl near the edge of the clearing. A deer, or what was left of it, lay torn apart, its entrails strewn across the ground. Mark swore under his breath. "It's close." Suddenly, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I felt a presence behind me, a cold, malevolent force. I turned slowly, my flashlight beam trembling. There it was, the beast, standing at the edge of the light, its eyes glowing with that same malevolent intelligence. It looked at me, and I felt a primal fear, the kind that paralyzes you. Mark fired his rifle, the shot echoing through the trees. The beast roared and charged at us, moving with unnatural speed. We ran back to the cabin, slamming the door shut just as it crashed into the side, the walls shaking from the impact. We were trapped. The beast clawed at the door, its growls reverberating through the cabin. Mark handed me a gun, his face grim. "We have to fight." The next few hours were a blur of fear and desperation. The beast attacked relentlessly, tearing at the walls and windows. We fired shot after shot, but it was like trying to stop a force of nature. The cabin was falling apart around us, and I knew we couldn't hold out much longer. Just when I thought it was over, the door burst open and the beast lunged at me. I fired blindly, my hands shaking. The bullet hit its shoulder, and it recoiled, giving me a brief moment to escape. I ran, not caring where I was going, just needing to get away. I heard Mark scream behind me, a sound that will haunt me forever. I turned back just in time to see the beast dragging him into the darkness, his screams fading into the night. I wanted to help, but fear had me in its grip. I kept running, my mind a whirlwind of terror and guilt. I don't remember much about how I got out of the forest. The next thing I knew, I was stumbling onto a road, flagging down a passing car. The driver took one look at me and called 911. I was taken to the hospital, treated for shock and minor injuries. The police questioned me, but I could tell they didn't believe a word I said. How could they? My story sounded insane. They chalked it up to a traumatic event and left it at that. I went into hiding after that, constantly moving, never staying in one place for too long. I knew the Midnight Society wouldn't stop until they found me. The beast was still out there, and so were they. I tried to warn others, posting anonymously online, but most people dismissed me as a lunatic. Months passed, and the sense of paranoia never left me. I lived in fear, always looking over my shoulder, expecting to see those masked figures. I barely slept, the nightmares relentless. I became a shadow of my former self, consumed by the horrors I'd witnessed. Then one night, I received another message. The hunt resumes. It was a reminder that no matter how far I ran, I could never escape. The Midnight Society was relentless, and the beast was their enforcer. I knew what I had to do. If I wanted any chance of surviving, I had to confront them. The only way out was through the darkness. Running was no longer an option. The Midnight Society had made it clear. I was their prey, and the hunt would never end unless I took a stand. Fueled by fear and desperation, I made a plan. If I was going down, I'd take as many of them with me as I could. I spent the next few weeks gathering information and supplies. Through anonymous forums and dark web contacts, I pieced together what I could about the Society's operations. They had several hideouts, but their main base was a secluded mansion deep in the forest, not far from where the first hunt had taken place. I armed myself to the teeth. Guns, knives, homemade explosives. I knew I'd need every advantage I could get. My final preparations included crafting a series of traps, hoping to level the playing field against the society and the beast. The night of the confrontation, I drove out to the forest, parking a mile away from the mansion. I moved silently through the trees, every step a reminder of the terror that had brought me here. The mansion loomed ahead, an ominous silhouette against the night sky. Lights flickered in the windows, shadows moving within. I approached cautiously, setting traps around the perimeter, tripwires connected to explosives, snares hidden beneath leaves. If I was going to face them, I'd make sure they paid a heavy price. Finally, I took a deep breath and moved towards the front door, gun in hand. The moment I stepped onto the porch, I knew they were aware of my presence. The door creaked open, revealing a dark hallway lined with flickering torches. The air was thick with the smell of burning wood and something more sinister, decay. I stepped inside, every nerve on edge. The hallway led to a large room where the society's members stood in a circle, their faces obscured by those damned masks. The leader, the tall figure in the black hood, stepped forward. "Welcome back," he said, his voice cold and mechanical. "We've been expecting you." I raised my gun, aiming it at the leader's head. "This ends tonight," he laughed, a chilling sound that echoed through the room. "You think you can end this? The hunt is eternal. You are merely the latest in a long line of prey." Before I could respond, a door behind the circle of masked figures burst open, and the beast charged into the room. Its eyes locked onto me, and a low growl rumbled from its throat. The members of the society stepped aside, giving it a clear path. I fired, the shots echoing through the mansion. Bullets hit the beast, but it barely slowed down. It was on me in seconds, its claws slashing through my jacket and drawing blood. I stumbled back, fighting to stay on my feet. The room erupted into chaos. The society members moved in, weapons drawn. I threw a homemade explosive at them, the blast sending several of them flying. The leader remained standing, unfazed by the carnage around him. I fought with everything I had, using the traps and weapons to hold them off. But the beast was relentless, its strength and speed unmatched. It knocked me to the ground, its claws pinning me down. I could feel its hard breath on my face, its eyes filled with a malevolent intelligence. Just as I thought it was over, a blinding light filled the room. The beast recoiled, snarling in pain. I looked up to see Mark, or what was left of him, standing in the doorway. His body was broken and scarred, but his eyes burned with a fierce determination. He held a flare in one hand, the bright light driving the beast back. "Run!" he shouted, his voice strained. "Get out of here." I didn't need to be told twice. I scrambled to my feet and bolted for the door, the sounds of the battle raging behind me. I made it to the forest, my heart pounding in my chest. The mansion exploded in a fiery blaze, the shockwave knocking me off my feet. I lay on the ground gasping for breath, my mind reeling. It was over. The Midnight Society was gone, and the beast was no more. But the cost had been high. Mark's sacrifice had given me a chance to escape, but I knew I'd never be the same. I disappeared after that, living off the grid, constantly moving. The nightmares never stopped, and I could still hear the beast's roar in the dead of night. But I survived, and I vowed to use my experience to warn others, to keep them from falling into the same trap. The dark web is a place of horrors, a hidden world where monsters, both human and otherwise, lurk in the shadows. I learned that the hard way, and now I live with the scars, both physical and mental, a constant reminder of the nightmare I endured. But I'm still here, and as long as I am, I'll keep fighting, because the hunt never truly ends. I joined a dark web forum that predicts natural disasters. Hey Reddit, this is something that has been eating at me for a while now. I don't know why I'm writing this, maybe for some closure, or maybe just to warn others, but I need to get this off my chest. Please, for the love of God, don't go looking for it. It all started about 6 months ago. I've always been a bit of a tech junkie, and I've known my way around the internet since I was a kid. I knew how to access the dark web, and often did it out of curiosity. I'd browse forums, check out weird sites, nothing too serious. But this one time, I stumbled upon a forum that was different. The site was called OracleNet. It looked like any other dark web forum at first glance. Bad design, poor grammar, cryptic posts. But what caught my eye was its tagline: foresee the future, prevent the catastrophe. Intrigued, I decided to check it out. At first, the post seemed like typical conspiracy theory nonsense. People predicting when the next big earthquake or hurricane would hit. But there was a post pinned to the top of the forum by a user named horrifying. It simply read, "For those who seek the truth, verify and you shall see." Attached were coordinates and dates for various locations around the world, along with predictions for natural disasters. Being skeptical, I decided to keep an eye on the forum. To my surprise, some of the predictions started coming true. Earthquakes, floods, and even volcanic eruptions were happening on the dates and at the locations predicted. It was eerie, but I still didn't think much of it. Coincidences happen, right? Then one night, I received a private message from horrifying. It was brief. "You are curious. Join us for the next prediction. Prove it to yourself." Below the message was a link. Against my better judgment, I clicked it. The link took me to a private chat room with only a handful of users. Horrifying was there, along with a few others with similarly cryptic usernames. Horrifying welcomed me and gave me a new set of coordinates. A small town in the Midwest, 2 days from now. The prediction was for a tornado. I lived only a few hours from the location, so I decided to take a trip out of morbid curiosity. When I arrived, everything seemed normal. It was a quiet town, people going about their daily lives, completely unaware of any impending doom. I decided to stay the night at a local motel, planning to leave the next morning. But around midnight, I was woken by the sound of sirens. The weather had turned violent. Howling winds, torrential rain. It was happening. The tornado touched down just outside of town and tore through the area, causing massive destruction. I was in shock. How the hell did they know? When I got back home, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had stumbled onto something I shouldn't have. I logged back into the forum, and there was horrifying waiting. "You have seen the truth," he messaged. "Now you must choose. Walk away or join us fully." I should have walked away. I know that now, but I didn't. Curiosity got the better of me. I replied, "I'm in." That's when things started getting really messed up. Horrifying sent me a detailed set of instructions to follow. I was to go to a specific location, a remote cabin in the woods, about 50 miles from my home, and wait there until further notice. He promised I would be part of something greater, something that could change the world. I packed a bag and headed out the next morning. The cabin was run down, but it looked like someone had been there recently. There was a laptop on the table, along with a note. Wait for the sign. I was alone, with nothing but the sound of the forest to keep me company. Hours passed, and then, around midnight, the laptop screen flickered to life. It was a live feed from a webcam showing what looked like a ritual of some sort. Hooded figures were chanting around a fire, and in the middle, there was a map of the world. They were placing markers on it, chanting louder and louder. My screen filled with coordinates and dates, predictions for the next disasters. But then something else appeared, a list of names. My heart stopped when I saw my own name at the top. The screen went black, and a new message appeared. You are part of the prophecy now. Prepare. I was frozen, paralyzed with fear. What had I gotten myself into? I tried to leave, but the door wouldn't budge. It was as if the cabin had come to life, trapping me inside. Panic set in as I realized I had no cell service, no way to contact anyone. I was completely alone. The laptop flickered again, showing another live feed. This time, it was my apartment. The camera was inside, showing my living room, my kitchen, my bedroom. Someone had been inside while I was gone, setting up cameras without my knowledge. The screen flashed with a final message. You are being watched. Do not try to escape. I spent the night in that cabin, too terrified to sleep. The next morning, the door was open, and I ran out of there as fast as I could. When I got home, everything seemed normal, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I tried to log back into OracleNet, but the site was gone, as if it had never existed. Since then, I've been living in constant fear. I've moved 3 times, but no matter where I go, I always feel like I'm being watched. Sometimes I find strange symbols drawn in chalk outside my door, or I hear whispers at night that I can't quite make out. I've stopped using the internet, but it doesn't seem to matter. Whatever I stumbled upon, it's not something you can just walk away from. And now, I fear that my name being on that list means I'm part of some dark prophecy that I'll never understand. Please, if you're reading this, stay away from the dark web. Stay away from OracleNet. Some things are not meant to be known, and once you've seen the truth, there's no going back. That's all for now. I'll post part 2 soon, if I can. If you don't hear from me, then you'll know they've found me. Hey everyone, I'm back. Honestly, I'm surprised I'm still here to write this. Things have gotten worse, and I don't know how much longer I can keep this up. Here's what's happened since my last post. After my experience at the cabin, I tried to get back to my life, but nothing felt the same. The feeling of being watched never left me. I began noticing small things, items moved around in my apartment, scratches on my door, and strange noises at night. I was constantly looking over my shoulder, paranoid and scared out of my mind. One night, about a week after my last post, I heard a loud crash coming from my living room. I grabbed the nearest object, a baseball bat, and crept out of my bedroom. The room was in disarray, furniture overturned, and glass shattered everywhere. But what caught my eye was the symbol drawn on my wall in what looked like blood. It was the same symbol I had seen in the ritual on the live feed. Before I could process what was happening, my phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. It begins, "You have been chosen." I dropped the phone in shock. How the hell did they get my number? I hadn't given it to anyone on that forum. I spent the next few days in a state of constant anxiety. I barely slept, jumping at every little noise, I knew I couldn't go to the police. They'd think I was insane. So I decided to do some digging on my own. I went to the library and started researching ancient symbols, quotes, and anything that might give me a clue about what I was dealing with. After hours of searching, I found a book on ancient prophecies. Flipping through the pages, I came across the symbol from my wall. It was associated with a cult called the Seers, a group believed to have the power to predict and influence natural disasters. According to the book, the Seers believed in a prophecy that involved a chosen few who would play a crucial role in the events leading up to the end of the world. These chosen ones were marked with the symbol and monitored by the cult until the time was right. My heart pounded as I read this. Was I one of the chosen? What did that even mean? I had so many questions, but no answers. As I was about to leave, an old man approached me. He looked frail, with deep-set eyes that seemed to hold centuries of knowledge. He handed me a piece of paper and whispered, "You can't escape your destiny." I unfolded the paper to find another set of coordinates and a date, 3 days from now. The location was an abandoned factory on the outskirts of the town. Against my better judgment, I decided to go. I needed answers, and this seemed like the only way to get them. When the day came, I drove out to the factory. It was a massive, decaying building covered in graffiti and overgrown with weeds. The place reeked of death and decay. I parked my car and made my way inside, my heart racing with each step. Inside, it was dark and cold. I used my phone's flashlight to navigate the maze of rusted machinery and debris. As I ventured deeper, I heard voices. I followed the sound until I reached a large open area. There, I saw them, hooded figures, just like the ones from the live feed, standing in a circle around a makeshift altar. I hid behind a pillar, watching in horror as they chanted in a language I couldn't understand. On the altar was a map of the world, marked with various symbols and dates. One of the figures stepped forward, removing his hood. It was Haruspex. He began speaking in a loud, commanding voice. "The time has come. The chosen ones are among us, and the prophecy will soon be fulfilled." He pointed to the map, highlighting the locations of upcoming disasters. "We must prepare for the final event, the one that will change everything." I felt sick to my stomach. What final event? What were they planning? I needed to get out of there and warn someone. Anyone. As I turned to leave, I accidentally knocked over a piece of metal, causing a loud clatter. The chanting stopped abruptly, and I felt dozens of eyes on me. Before I could run, strong hands grabbed me, dragging me into the circle. I struggled, but it was no use. Haruspex looked down at me with a sinister smile. "Ah, the curious one. You have seen too much." They tied me to a chair and continued their ritual, ignoring my pleas for mercy. Hours passed, and I felt myself slipping in and out of consciousness. The air was thick with incense, and the chanting grew louder and more frenzied. I thought I was going to die there. But then, something strange happened. The chanting stopped, and the room fell silent. Haruspex approached me, holding a small, ornate dagger. He cut my bonds and whispered in my ear, "You are free to go, for now. But remember, we are always watching. The prophecy will be fulfilled, with or without you." I stumbled out of the factory, my mind a whirlwind of fear and confusion. I don't know how I made it home, but I did. Since that night, the feeling of being watched has intensified. I see shadows moving in the corners of my vision, hear whispers in the dead of night. I know they're out there, waiting for the right moment. I've decided to keep moving, never staying in one place for too long. Maybe I can outrun them, maybe not. But one thing is clear. I'm part of something much bigger and much darker than I ever imagined. If you're reading this, please be careful. Don't make the same mistake I did. Stay away from the dark web, and for the love of God, don't go looking for OracleNet. I'll try to post part 3 soon if I can. If you don't hear from me, well, you'll know they've finally caught up with me. Hey Reddit, it's been a while since my last update. I've been on the run, trying to stay one step ahead of the seers. Things have gotten even more intense, and I don't know how much longer I can keep this up. Here's what's been happening. After the incident at the factory, I decided to leave town. I packed up what little I had and hit the road, moving from city to city, never staying in one place for more than a few days. I thought I could escape them, but it turns out you can't run from a prophecy. A few weeks ago, I was in a small town in the middle of nowhere, trying to keep a low profile. One night, I was staying in a cheap motel, and as usual, I barely slept. Around 3 a.m., I heard a soft tapping on my window. My heart raced as I crept over to see what it was. Outside, in the dim light, I saw a figure standing there. It was the old man from the library. He looked even more haggard and desperate than before. He motioned for me to come outside. Against my better judgment, I did. He spoke quickly, his voice trembling. They're getting closer. You can't keep running. You need to understand what's at stake. He handed me a small worn book. This contains the history of the seers and their true purpose. Read it, and you might have a chance. Before I could ask him anything, he vanished into the night. I went back inside and started reading. The book was filled with ancient texts, symbols, and disturbing illustrations. It detailed the origins of the seers, a cult that believed they could control the fate of the world through rituals and sacrifices. According to the book, the seers had been around for centuries, manipulating events from behind the scenes. They believed that by predicting and causing natural disasters, they could bring about a series of cataclysmic events that would eventually lead to the Great Purge, an apocalyptic event that would wipe out most of humanity, leaving only the chosen few to rebuild the world in their image. I was horrified. This wasn't just about predicting disasters, they were actively causing them. The book also mentioned the chosen ones, people marked by the seers to play a crucial role in the Great Purge. My name was on that list. I was destined to be part of their twisted plan. I knew I couldn't do this alone. I needed help. I reached out to an old friend, Max, who was a hacker and conspiracy theorist. If anyone could help me dig deep into this, it was him. I contacted him using a burner phone and arranged to meet in a secluded location. When we met, I told him everything. At first, he thought I was joking, but the look on my face convinced him otherwise. He agreed to help me, and we started digging into the dark web, trying to find any traces of OracleNet and the seers. It wasn't long before we found something. Max managed to locate a hidden server connected to OracleNet. It contained thousands of files, predictions, rituals, names, and locations. It was a treasure trove of information, but it was also a death sentence. We knew that accessing it put us on their radar. As we sifted through the files, we found detailed plans for upcoming disasters. There were coordinates and dates for earthquakes, floods, and other calamities. But what shocked us the most was a file labeled the final event. It detailed a massive volcanic eruption that would trigger a chain reaction of catastrophic events leading to the Great Purge. We had to do something. We couldn't just sit back and watch the world burn. Max and I decided to take the information to the authorities, but we knew it wouldn't be easy. We needed concrete proof, something that couldn't be dismissed as a conspiracy theory. We continued digging, and that's when we found it. A video file. It was footage of a ritual, much like the one I had seen at the factory. Hooded figures were chanting around a map, placing markers on it. But this time, there was something different. They were talking about me. Haruspex was leading the ritual, his voice cold and menacing. The time of the chosen is upon us. We must prepare for the final event. The one known as my name will play a pivotal role. They cannot escape their destiny. I felt a chill run down my spine. They were watching me, and they knew everything. Max and I had to move fast. We copied all the files onto an encrypted drive and prepared to go to the FBI. We knew it was a long shot, but it was our only hope. As we were about to leave, Max's computer started beeping. Someone was trying to hack into our system. We had been found. Max scrambled to shut everything down, but it was too late. The screen went black, and a message appeared. You cannot hide from destiny. Panic set in as we grabbed our stuff and ran. We made it to Max's car and drove as fast as we could, heading for the nearest FBI office. We knew they would be coming for us, and we had to get there before it was too late. We arrived at the FBI office, disheveled and out of breath. We demanded to speak to someone in charge, showing them the encrypted drive and explaining everything. They were skeptical, but when they saw the files, their demeanor changed. They took us into a secure room and started asking questions. As we recounted everything, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were still being watched. The FBI agents assured us we were safe, but I knew better. The seers had eyes everywhere. After hours of questioning, they told us they would investigate and put us in protective custody. We were taken to a safe house, where we've been ever since. It's been a few days, and we haven't heard anything. I don't know if the FBI is taking this seriously, or if they're just trying to keep us quiet. What I do know is that the seers won't stop. They will come for us, and the final event is still looming. I'm scared, more than I've ever been, but I won't stop fighting. I have to find a way to stop them, to prevent the Great Purge. Hey Reddit, this is probably going to be my last update. Things have taken a turn for the worse, and I'm not sure how much time I have left. I need to get this out before it's too late. Here's what's been happening. After being placed in the safe house by the FBI, Max and I tried to settle into some semblance of normalcy, though normal had lost all meaning. We were constantly looking over our shoulders, every noise making us jump. The safe house was supposed to be secure, but I could never shake the feeling that we were being watched. The FBI agents assured us they were working on tracking down the seers and preventing the final event, but days turned into weeks with no real updates. We felt like sitting ducks, waiting for the inevitable. One night, I woke up to the sound of whispers. At first, I thought it was just a nightmare, but then I heard it again, clearer this time. It was coming from the living room. I crept out of bed and peeked through the door. Max was sitting at the table, staring intently at his laptop. The screen was filled with lines of code, and he was muttering to himself. "Max, what are you doing?" I whispered. He didn't respond, just kept typing furiously. I walked over and saw that he was hacking into something. Before I could stop him, the screen flashed, and a familiar message appeared. "You cannot hide from destiny." Max looked up at me, his eyes wide with fear. "They found us. We need to leave. Now." We grabbed our things and bolted out the door. The safe house was compromised, and we had no time to waste. We ran through the dark streets, trying to stay out of sight. We made it to a nearby park and hid in the shadows, catching our breath. "What do we do now?" I asked, panic setting in. "We need to get to the public," Max said. "We need to expose them. It's the only way." We found a 24-hour internet cafe and set up shop in the back corner. Max started uploading the files to every major news outlet, social media platform, and forum he could think of. We knew it was a long shot, but it was our only hope. As the uploads progressed, we heard a commotion outside. Dark SUVs pulled up to the cafe, and men in black suits poured out, guns drawn. They were coming for us. We had only seconds to react. "Go out the back," Max hissed. "I'll hold them off." "No, I'm not leaving you," I protested. "Just go," he shouted, shoving me towards the back door. I ran, tears streaming down my face. As I made it out the back, I heard gunshots and a scream. I wanted to go back to help him, but I knew it was too late. Max had sacrificed himself so I could escape. I kept running, my mind a blur of fear and grief. I didn't stop until I was sure I wasn't being followed. I found a dingy motel and holed up there, trying to make sense of everything. The next morning, the news was everywhere. The files Max had uploaded were making headlines. Secret cult manipulates natural disasters. Hacker exposes doomsday plot. People were finally paying attention, but I knew it wasn't enough. Later that day, I received a call from an unknown number. I hesitated before answering, my heart pounding. "Hello?" I said, my voice shaking. "Ah, the chosen one," a familiar voice purred. It was Harrispex. "You've caused quite a stir." "What do you want?" I demanded, trying to sound braver than I felt. "It's simple," he replied. "You will join us willingly, or we will make you. The final event is approaching, and your role is crucial." "I'll never join you," I spat. "I'll die first." Harrispex laughed, a chilling sound. "That can be arranged, but remember, we are always watching. You cannot escape destiny." The line went dead, and I knew I was out of options. I couldn't keep running, and I couldn't fight them alone. I needed help, but I didn't know where to turn. In a last-ditch effort, I contacted the journalist who had picked up Max's story. I arranged to meet her in a public place, hoping she could help me find a way to stop the seers. We met in a crowded cafe downtown. She was a tough, no-nonsense woman who had seen it all. I told her everything, from the dark web forum to the rituals, and she listened intently. "We need to get this out to the world," she said. "The more people who know, the harder it will be for them to operate." We spent the next few days gathering evidence, planning our next move. But just as we were about to go public with a live broadcast, the power went out. The cafe plunged into darkness, and I heard the sound of glass breaking. "They're here," the journalist whispered, her voice trembling. We tried to make a run for it, but they were too fast. Hooded figures surrounded us, dragging us into the alley behind the cafe. Harrispex stepped forward, his eyes gleaming with triumph. "It's over," he said. "You will fulfill your destiny." They forced us into a van and drove for what felt like hours. When we finally stopped, we were at another remote location, a place that looked like it had been abandoned for years. They dragged us inside and tied us to chairs in front of a large altar. Haruspex began chanting, and the room filled with that same sickening feeling of dread I had experienced before. I struggled against my bonds, but it was no use. I looked at the journalist, her eyes filled with determination. "We have to stop them," she whispered. As the ritual reached its climax, the ground began to shake. Haruspex smiled, raising his hands to the sky. "The final event is upon us. The Great Purge will begin." But then, something unexpected happened. The shaking intensified, and the building started to crumble. The seers looked panicked, their ritual spiraling out of control. I felt a surge of hope. Maybe, just maybe, we could survive this. In the chaos, I managed to free myself and the journalist. We ran for the exit, dodging falling debris and the frantic cult members. As we burst outside, the ground split open, and a massive chasm swallowed the building whole. We didn't stop running until we were far away from the destruction. Exhausted and terrified, we collapsed on the side of the road, watching the smoke rise in the distance. The journalist turned to me, her eyes fierce. "This isn't over. We need to keep fighting, keep exposing them. People need to know the truth." And so, that's where I am now. We're still on the run, still trying to stop the seers. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know one thing. We won't give up. We can't. The fate of the world depends on it. If you're reading this, please be careful. Stay vigilant and trust no one. The seers are still out there, and they will stop at nothing to fulfill their prophecy. But together, we can fight back. We can stop them. Thank you for listening, and stay safe.